The Federal Executive Council meeting today in Abuja discussed various critical issues affecting the country and took far-reaching decisions, including the long-standing issue of an acceptable minimum wage for Nigerian workers. The meeting was widely anticipated to bridge the gap between government's proposal and labor demands. However, the president arrived at a decision to consult subnationals and other stakeholders to agree on a new and an acceptable minimum wage after the long wait by labor and workers for an anticipated end at FEC. Yet, the wait continues until the president concludes consultations with stakeholders. What is the effect of a further delay of decisions on the proposed minimum wage on labor, the workers, and Nigerians at large? These issues will dominate discussion on the program tonight. Thanks for joining us. I am your carrier, Clinton, and this is Nigeria Today. Joining us in the studio to have a conversation on the update on the proposed minimum wage is the National Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, Chude Achike. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Also with us in the studio is the former Director General of Voice of Nigeria, Osita Okechukwu. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Good evening.
Now, I'll start with you, Osita. First, let's assess the pending situation between Labour and the federal government on an acceptable minimum wage for Nigerian workers.
For me, I've talked to Labour, I've also talked to the government side. The issue on the ground is that Labour is realistic, that there's economic hardship, and that the money they have in hand could not meet up with their expenses for the month. That is realism. The government on the other side is also realistic in saying that Labour demanding from 615,000 naira per month is not affordable. Labour came down to 250,000. And government is still saying that it's not affordable. So there's realism on both sides, and there's also the issue of affordability, especially when we consider that when it was 30,000 naira per the minimum wage, that about 20 states were not able to meet up. And the misrepresentation in certain quarters is that I think that some of those states deliberately do not want to pay. No. The truth of the matter is that the Nigerian economic situation is in a dire strait. The amount of money in the hands of government is so meager that unless you extinguish other competing demands like health, like education, like infrastructure of roads, then you cannot meet up what Labour is demanding. We are in a situation where, because of the fact that the crude oil will sell, we use the same money to buy the refined petroleum products, leaving us with little accruing to us. It gives us a big headache. And unluckily, for the Nigerian states, we are not also doing so well in agriculture, that they occupy about 70% of the working people. So when you mix it, you find that the only middle ground that could help Labour, if Labour is to seek my advice, is that Labour should already, the Nigerian worker has a deduction in housing, 2.5 per month. The government, instead of going to 200,000 per month, or even 100,000 that might not be paid, the government should use the money to provide houses for every worker.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll have to stop you there, Osita. Now, to you, Achike. Now, at the Federal Executive Council meeting today, which, by the way, raised the hopes of workers, the president said he will consult with some nationals and other stakeholders, before he comes to a decision, on the minimum wage. Now, what effect, or like I say, what's the effect of this further delay on workers and labor?
It's devastating. Because today, the government is saying that they are facing an existential situation. And so everything they have done with regards to this minimum wage and reluctance to pay it has been hinged on the fact that they say the economy cannot sustain it. But there are human beings that are involved, that are the other side of this discussion. And their very lives are at stake. Their existence is at stake. They cannot feed their children. They cannot clothe their children. They cannot provide medical attention for their children. So the average Nigerian today, not just workers, is facing a dire economic situation that has implication to his survivor or her survivor. That's where they find themselves. And we have seen the devastating impact of inflation in the country in the past, how many months. We have seen the inability of the average Nigerian to live up to his responsibility, social responsibility.
All right,
so that is the impact of further delaying this.
Okay, now, Chude, having heard what you just said, Labour is saying 250,000. Meanwhile, of course, the government has given a figure that they are disagreeing with. Now, do you see 250,000 as being feasible?
It depends on how you look at it. Do we see it as feasible in terms of government's ability
to pay
and the other partners' ability to pay? Or do we see it as feasible in terms of the ability of the Nigerian worker to live on it? They both might not be very feasible. But the workers, you see, it depends again. And you see, it's easy to just say, well, the government cannot pay this. They did not pay 30,000 the other time. How can they pay 250,000 and all that? But if you look at the attitude of government officials over the years, let me just say this clearly, that what we are going through today is a consequence of the sins of the past and the present. Nigeria has no business being in this dire economic situation. A country that is blessed left, right, and center with not just human resources, natural resources also. So there has been a mismanagement of the Nigerian political system over the years. And that's where we are now. Now government says it is finding it very difficult to meet up with expectations. Look, I think it is feasible if the government puts its mind to it. I think it is feasible. The workers, there is no doubt that if you're saying workers should make compromise, that the workers are expected to make compromise. Don't forget that the whole essence of the discussion is about compromise. That's what the tripartite, discussions has been all about. Once negotiations is the basis for which, you are building your, discussions, then it entails compromise. And don't forget, just like Mr. Kechu has said, at the initial stage, Labour was talking about ₦1 million. They moved it down to 650. Now they are talking about 250. All along the way, there have been compromises by Labour. But we have not had the same kind of movement from government, from the other side, and the organized private sector. So we expect that somewhere along the line, they are going to meet. It is good that the president has said he's going to meet with all the other parties concerned. Those other parties concerned, don't forget that it's a tripartite negotiation. They include not just the OPS, organized private sector, or government, or governments of the subnational units, but also Labour. Because whatever agreement, that the president brings before the National Assembly must be based on tripartism, an agreement between these three components of this negotiation.
Okay, thank you very much.
It cannot be a two-way thing, it cannot be a one-way thing, otherwise it becomes an imposition.
Okay. Now, Osita, you know, having heard what Echude said, there's been quite of, you know, up and here and there, up and down disagreements, you know, consultations, deliberations, and all of that. Now, the president has said, okay, I will consult. I want to consult with subnationals, you know, other stakeholders before I come to a decision. Now, how will the president balance the diverse interests, you know, and concerns of stakeholders to arrive at a decision that benefits both employees and employers?
The truth of the matter is that we have to be pragmatic. One, we are told in elementary economics that if we had much cash pursuing few goods, what are you going to have? Hyperinflation. Already, we're in a stagnant economy. There's inflation. So if we push in, assuming the government had that cash, as my friend Achike is saying, and push the cash into the system, it's going to chase few goods. And it's going to be worthless. That's what I'm saying. If I'm the president of Labour Congress or president of TUC, I will agree with my workers. I'm aware that 70 to 80, if not 90% of Nigerian workers do not have shelter. Government, come. We already have 2.5 being deducted from us. There are international organizations who are ready to help government to augment if you sincerely say we are going to mass housing. Let us have shelter. And you also promised that you are going to provide transportation. It becomes very easy if the staff are living in clusters for the driver to live with the director, deputy director down the line. It becomes very easy. You achieve shelter with the same one stone, you achieve transport with one stone, and you achieve peace of mind of the family. When I was presiding over Voice of Nigeria, the greatest demand I have anytime we have overhead is about rent. If you know the comfort a family that lives in their own house will have, you will know that it makes a lot of sense that the labor unions should put it in one of their bouquet. That look, we know the hyperinflation that will be generated if we push in 100,000 or 150 per worker as minimum wage. It is going to make useless that money being pushed in. And I'm also aware the Senate of the Federal Republic is today looking into the 30 trillion of ways and means President Buhari regime incurred. At the end of the day, we will notice that Buhari made sure that salaries are paid as and when due. Pension, the same thing. You might find that amount coming from borrowing. We do not have much money. The money we are accruing and the commitments we had in the past, as Achike said, there's nothing, we can't run away from debts.
Thank you very much.
We can't run away from debts we have already acquired.
I'll have to stop you
So
there.
you must put it in your calculation.
Okay.
So you cannot say, why are we having the debts?
Thank you very much.
It's a different discussion.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll take a short break now and listen to some Nigerians on the expectations from the president and further consultations as put together by Suleiman Abdulwahab. Don't go away.
On the stands with Labour and the president meeting the stakeholders, right? I think the president is trying to do his best to make sure all parties to the agreement have a meaningful understanding and reach a consensus that will be good for both parties. So I think the president, in his wisdom, being very eloquent, proactive president. We appreciate his effort. I think he's going to come out with something that is very meaningful for the whole stakeholders.
At least a civil servant should go home with it. At least, let's be realistic. 150. Even if I know how we are crying.
He's ready to do it from the body language I'm seeing, but it might not be up to that 250,000. But from the body language, I believe the president is ready to move from that 30,000. And even the 60,000 that had been offered, I believe he's ready to move even above that.
Yes, I'm a civil servant actually, so you're with the right person, because we are all looking forward to hear from him. We have been listening and finding out that the president is ready to do something.
President, as well as he can as well support the state by giving them some amount, especially those states that cannot meet up in case.
This is still Nigeria Today, and we are looking at the update on the proposed minimum wage. And of course, I have two gentlemen here in the studio with me. Now, Chude, you had the reaction of people out there. Some said from the body language, he's ready to do it. What's your thought?
Well, you know, the president did not promise any kind of wage. During his inauguration, he promised a living wage. And he has had cause to talk about a living wage. Only that he did not define what a living wage is, what constitutes a living wage. Is it that wage that you pay to the worker that can take him home and take care of basic needs? 60,000, 100,000 will not do that, will not constitute a living wage. So we hope, you know, that with the body language that people are talking about, that as he's engaging with other stakeholders, that he will also impress upon these other stakeholders the reason why they have to pay workers a living wage. Workers are Nigerians, you know, with expectations, with hope, with a right to live and to live properly. So they need to look for a way, and also look at the cost of governance, and to see whether there are some places where they can chip off, you know, unnecessary wastages, and to be able to garner the kind of money that is needed, not just to attend to the needs of the workers, but to also attend to other social infrastructural needs in the country. There's too much wastages, and when you talk about people facing an existential challenge, it's for the ordinary Nigerians. They are the ones that are living through that experience. They are the ones that have no hope for tomorrow. They are the ones that have issues of health-related issues, and they cannot go to hospital, they cannot buy medicines. And these things are clear. But the elites do not face this. They do not have any fear of tomorrow. And so we need political elites, and we hope that the president can impress it upon these people on the need to also cut down on unnecessary ostentation so that they will be able to have enough money, because this country sorely needs a lot of savings. You know, we talked about debt. Yes, countries owe debts and the rest, but there are debts that are unsustainable. And we are getting to a level where we cannot sustain our debts. And the question I've always asked all this while, really, the issue of security votes. What can't we do something about these security votes and cut off some of these things and see whether we can move some of these monies to other areas that will be able to solve some of the immediate problems that the Nigerian nation is facing. Lastly, let me just say this. This is a period for general sacrifice by everybody, by both the young, the old, the downtrodden, who have been making sacrifices. Because from 1979, if you remember that period, depending on how old one is, we are told to tighten our belt. From 1979 to date, we have been tightening our belt. So we want those people who are in charge of this country to also learn how to tighten their belt, so that we can make a joint sacrifice for the good of our country.
Thank you very much, Chude. Now, back to you, Osita. You know, from what you said earlier, we are, you know, there's no money from what, you know, the summary of what you said. Now, but meanwhile, the 35,000 Naira wage award has stopped since, you know, about March or thereabout 2024. And some say it's supposed to be a palliative, you know, to cushion the effect or delay of the new minimum wage. What's your thoughts on this?
No, what I'm saying, we moved from 30, and government is saying 62. Is about 100% increase. If you leave it at that and you can afford it, then we look into the other extension need of the worker.
No, what I'm actually asking, talking about the wage award.
You don't need to bother yourself about that. Mm-hmm. We are moving to a situation where there will be a law. What is captured by the law, that is the minimum wage, not the discretion of the government. The essence of the minimum wage is that the National Assembly is going to pass it into a law. That even after the exit of President Tinubu and the governors, the new president, unless there is a change in the next 5 years, or amendment of that law, will keep to it. I'm talking of what is practical, pragmatic, affordable. I don't want workers to be owed. You are in pain now. And when you are owed, you go into more pain. And don't forget, I run a public relations firm. I employ about 6 persons. If you jack it up and I cannot pay, the tendency for me is to drop about 4 and leave only 2. And it is not also good to leave, to get we are saying that there is high unemployment, and the few who are working are retrenched. Is it a fair game? I think the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, they have a lot to do. Let them not behave as if they don't know the membership of the NUC and TUC are in Ministry of Finance. They are in Central Bank. They are in the presidency. They are working with the governors. They are working with the local council. So they know exactly how much that comes in our bouquet. Not an assumption. If they go into what Achike is saying, I didn't sit in their table. National Assembly, State Assembly, please cut their salaries. Executive cut their salaries. It's not on their table. What they released to us is 40,000 for rent, this and that and that. And if you use what they used, you know that the best they can do is to find a stone that can deal with shelter, deal with transport, deal with health, and that is housing.
Thank you very much. Now, Trudy, we just have about a minute to go. Now, how important is it for President Tinubu to consider the opinions and perspectives of various stakeholders before finalizing decision on the minimum wage?
It's important now because everybody is now looking up to him. The interview segment that you ran, we are talking about the president and his body language, and look, he's the father of the nation. When a nation is in crisis, when the 9/11 bombing of the Twin Towers happened.
We don't want such
No, I'm making a point. No, I'm making a point. I'm talking about moments of crisis, because in the moment of crisis, the Americans were looking for their president because he's the one that will give them hope. He's the one that will give them direction about where the country has to go. And they waited for him. And he did give them hope, regardless of partisanship. It is the same thing with our president. People are waiting for him. He is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There is a period when a period of national emergency with regards to labor-related issues. People are looking up to the president to push the bar and to make Nigerian workers and their dependents happy. That is not a bad thing to expect from a president.
Definitely, he will meet our expectations. We do hope that. And this is where we draw the curtain for today on the program Nigeria Today. I had with me the National Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, NUJ, Comrade Achike Chude. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And of course, I have the former Director General, Voice of Nigeria. He's also a public relations consultant, Osita Okechukwu. Thank you so much for your thoughts, for sharing your thoughts with us.
I appreciate.
And thank you for being part of the program. Remember, the program Nigeria Today airs weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News. You can also check out this episode and others on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hour. I am Eukaria Clinton. Goodbye.